Okay, first of all, I know the history behind the WNBA. I know that both of those cities have had teams before and they got us where we're at, so I'm thankful.
What occurs when a basketball player's little grievance against the referees escalates into a full-fledged conflict against the league as a whole? Sophie Cunningham just learned the hard way, and the WNBA's reaction has shocked the basketball community in ways no one anticipated. Imagine this. While watching your favorite team play, you observe that the referees are making some dubious calls. You might gripe to your friends or even share something on social media, but what if voicing that truth put you in danger of losing thousands of dollars and facing criticism from league officials? Sophie Cunningham experienced precisely that. And something more darker that lies beneath the surface of women's professional basketball is about to be revealed by her story. Everything began rather casually. Sophie was irritated after witnessing yet another game that was full of bad calls and dubious officiating choices. She shared her candid opinions on TikTok, as millions of admirers do every day. Sophie, in contrast to the rest of us, referred to the officials as useless, which is precisely what she believed they were. Everything would alter with those 6 letters. She received a $500 fine from the WNBA within hours, shocking both players and fans. The majority of people would have moved on, apologized, and learned their lesson. Sophie Cunningham, however, is not like most individuals. She doubled down rather than backed down. Sophie vented her annoyance on her podcast, where she did more than merely explain her earlier remarks. She went into further detail about them, disclosing information that the WNBA badly wished to keep hidden. She brought to light the long-simmering, widespread discontent among players regarding the refereeing standards. The league reacted quickly and harshly. She was fined an additional $1,500, making her total fines an astounding $2,000. The tale gets extremely interesting at this point, though. These sanctions did something the WNBA never anticipated. Instead of silencing Sophie, she became a martyr as a result. Social media suddenly took off. #helping when fans realized they weren't the only ones who were frustrated. Sophie started to trend globally. The fines weren't the only thing that caused uproar. It concerned the obvious disparity in the league's approach to various circumstances. Other players, including as star Caitlin Clark, had suffered cruel treatment on the court for 2 entire seasons without receiving a single citation against those in charge, while Sophie faced numerous penalties for speaking her truth. Fans couldn't stand the contrast, which was unavoidable. GoFundMe campaigns seemed to cover Sophie's fines in a matter of hours, and they nearly immediately achieved their objectives. In record time, thousands of signatures were collected on petitions calling for openness in the officiating process. The inquiries were straightforward, yet devastating. Why punish a player for expressing the truth in a way that is visible to all? Why disregard the demands for increased accountability? The WNBA had unintentionally sparked a movement, which was precisely what they were attempting to stop. However, you must comprehend how the WNBA differs from other major basketball leagues in order to comprehend how he got here. Prominent NBA players like Draymond Green have devoted their entire careers to their unwavering honesty as well as their skill. Charles Barkley's candid and unapologetic criticism of the game and its shortcomings is what made him a cultural legend. Fans praise this type of candor rather than merely tolerating it. It now forms a part of basketball's character. The experience of Sophie Cunningham paints an entirely different picture. The reaction was unsettling as she publicly criticized officials for not protecting athletes, notably Caitlin Clark. In front of her entire team, a league official drew her away and subtly told her, "They're going to find you again." This wasn't merely a reprimand. The WNBA's tolerance for free speech has severe boundaries, and the repercussions are severe, as was made very evident. The WNBA appears to have a much tougher rulebook, where speaking up carries severe repercussions, in contrast to the NBA's culture of free communication. The WNBA didn't expect to produce the ideal illustration of the strife effect. The situation where information spreads more widely despite efforts to suppress it. Their attempt to silence Sophie Cunningham had the exact opposite effect. Her reprimand strengthened her argument and brought even more attention to the officiating problems she had shown. When you take into account the recent scandals involving athletes like Caitlin Clark receiving unpunished cheap shots, the irony becomes even more obvious. Fans have been witnessing elite athletes take risky hits that would get them kicked out in other leagues for more than 2 years. However, there haven't been many notable repercussions from these instances. Clark's eye might have been gravely wounded by DJ Carrington's near miss and Marina Mabrey's vicious blindside strike. These incidents are now far too frequent. Meanwhile, the WNBA abruptly shifts its attention to imposing discipline after Sophie Cunningham merely notes that referees are not performing their duties. The priorities appear to be entirely out of sync, as if someone were preoccupied with someone forgetting to use a coaster while ignoring a burning fire in their home. The pattern that shows up is really concerning. Have you ever felt uneasy after a WNBA game because you thought the competition wasn't fair? Sophie was the one who brought attention to that underlying frustration. Although she freely admits that officiating is a difficult job, the league's inconsistent officiating is what really worries her. It's not just a few missed calls here and there. It concerns a systemic issue that influences how teams modify their tactics, how supporters respond with growing ire, and how players suppress their annoyance following games. This issue is exemplified by the recent events concerning Caitlin Clark. During sports, star players frequently take cheap shots without anybody noticing. Social media is flooded with questions, and arenas are no exception. Why are these infractions not penalized? Why does the league seem to ignore this? From coast to coast, fans, rookies, and veterans are all posing the same perplexing query. What is the situation with the referees? However, the league has responded by fining players who dared to voice their opinions rather than resolving these issues. Although that $500 fine might not seem like much to some, it did nothing to ease tensions. Rather, it fueled an already raging inferno. Sophie's tale became far more significant as a result of these sanctions. A call to action for all those who have been quietly dissatisfied with the way women's basketball officiating is going. The disparity between the WNBA strategy and that of other professional leagues is glaring and worrisome. Consider the NFL as an example. Even with well-publicized errors like the notorious 2019 Saints game no call, the league still seems far more accountable. Fans, players, and the media all publicly examine and debate NFL officials' judgments since they are seen as professionals. Without worrying about getting in trouble, players can express their frustrations with refereeing. Furthermore, even in the face of errors, this transparency fosters trust. It appears like the WNBA is going in the complete opposite direction, one that prioritizes silencing detractors above resolving the fundamental issues. Poor officiating causes much more harm than just influencing game results, according to research. It fundamentally undermines trust. Supporters begin to question the league's overall credibility and fairness. Due to their fear of fines and punishments, players become reluctant to speak up, which inhibits candid dialogue. Silence begets further suspicion, which might drive away the very players and fans the league depends on for growth and survival. This starts a vicious cycle. The bureaucratic nightmare that Sophie's predicament turned into is what makes it even more bizarre. It seems like something from a Kafka story to get penalized for talking about your own penalty. In her podcast, Sophie described how her general manager drew her away to inform her of yet another punishment in front of her teammates. Even though she acknowledged that certain officials are highly skilled and that their work is extremely challenging, her remarks were insufficient to get around the league's severe disciplinary mechanism. This demonstrates a basic failure in the way issues are handled. Players like Sophie wouldn't feel the need to express their annoyance in public if referees were regularly making the correct decisions and upholding order on the court. The fact that this is taking place indicates that there are significant problems with officiating standards. What ought to have been a straightforward complaint turned into a much larger dispute about free speech and the boundaries of league power when the league decided to dismiss the concerns and increase penalties rather than take the criticism seriously and try to make improvements. It couldn't have come at a worse moment for the WNBA standing. The league came under fire for fostering what many perceive to be a hostile climate where candid criticism is treated with fines and intimidation, especially after the Wall Street Journal published an editorial article voicing worries about possible civil rights abuses against Caitlin Clark. Media organizations started to wonder if the WNBA creates an environment where athletes felt comfortable raising valid complaints. One player or one fine is no longer the only factor in this. Although the fury from fans ought to be expected, it goes beyond the usual grievances on social media. They observe the discrepancy between the league's stated values and its actual practices. People are joining petitions for genuine officiating reform, volunteering to pay Sophie's fines, and calling for transparency that goes well beyond cosmetic adjustments. This reflects a great deal of dissatisfaction with leadership that appears more concerned with managing the narrative than dealing with the underlying problems that are alienating players and supporters. The way the WNBA has handled the whole matter runs the risk of offending the players and fans who are most passionate about the sport. There are significant concerns about where priorities truly lay when a league seems more inclined to punish sincere remarks than risky on-court behavior. Sophie's criticism wasn't impolite or provocative. No foul language or personal assaults, just the straightforward reality that mirrored the thoughts of innumerable viewers. However, the league's response seemed to be an attempt to silence dissent rather than to listen and make improvements. The way the strategy suppresses genuine voices that could forge closer bonds with fans is especially harmful. Outspoken individuals are encouraged to question conventions and express their opinions, which is why leagues like the NBA flourish. The WNBA's seen but not heard position puts the sport at risk of becoming bland and unmemorable, the exact opposite of what a league in growth needs. Sophie's podcast is lively and provides fans with real insight into the viewpoints of the athletes. However, the WNBA punishes her each time she voiced valid concerns. The communication is absolutely clear. No criticism will be accepted, regardless of how reasonable or helpful it is. This fosters an atmosphere where issues fester in silence until they grow too significant to ignore. The ramifications of this incident highlight the reasons why the WNBA still faces obstacles in gaining public respect and recognition. Growth is practically impossible when leadership concentrates more on regulating player speech than on enhancing the final product. When the game is well run and fairly